The vast emptiness of space was punctuated by the gentle hum of the command bridge. Admiral Kalin stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his tall figure casting a long shadow across the polished floor of the Terran flagship. Indomitable. Through the expansive viewport, stars glittered like scattered diamonds against the velvet backdrop of the cosmos. The steady beeping of instruments and the occasional murmur of his crew formed a familiar symphony that had accompanied him through countless missions. "Admiral," called Lieutenant Race from the communications station, her voice cutting through the ambient noise. "We're receiving a distress signal." Kalin turned his weathered face, illuminated by the blue glow of the holographic displays. "A source." It's coming from the Veil Nebula, sir. Quadrant 7? The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew what Quadrant 7 meant: restricted space forbidden by Galactic Council decree. Humans classified as Deathworlders, due to their evolution on a high-gravity, high-radiation planet with predators and natural disasters, were explicitly prohibited from entering certain regions of space. The Council feared the unpredictable nature of humans, their tenacity, and their remarkable ability to survive and adapt in conditions that would kill most sentient species. "Can you identify the vessel?" Kalin asked, his voice betraying no emotion. Intelligence Officer Varos approached with a datapad. "Preliminary analysis suggests it's a Neveran exploration vessel, sir. Their quantum signature is unmistakable." Kalin nodded slowly. The Neverans, a species known for their peaceful exploration and scientific endeavors. They were one of the few species that had openly advocated for human integration into the wider galactic community despite the reservations of the Galactic Council. "Play the message," Kalin ordered. The sound that filled the bridge sent chills down the spines of everyone present, a desperate garbled transmission in the universal trade language. "This is the Neveran vessel, Starlight Seeker. We are under attack by unknown entities. Our engines are critically damaged. Hull breaches on multiple decks. We cannot..." The message dissolved into static before resuming. "If anyone receives this, please help us. Coordinates attached." Captain Janice stepped forward, her uniform immaculate despite the long shift. "Sir, the Galactic Council has explicitly forbidden human intervention in Quadrant 7. "I'm aware of the restrictions, Captain," Kalin replied, his gray eyes fixed on the distant nebula visible through the viewport. "With all due respect, Admiral..." Varos interjected, "The Council will view any intervention as a direct violation of the Treaty of Proxima. The diplomatic repercussions could be severe." Kalin remained silent, weighing his options carefully. The Treaty of Proxima had been established after humanity's swift and decisive victory in the brief but intense conflict with the Taurani hegemony. The galaxy had watched in horror as human warships, despite being technologically inferior, had outmaneuvered and outfought a species that had dominated its sector for millennia. The treaty was as much about protecting other species from humans as it was about integrating humanity into the galactic community. "They're dying out there," said Lieutenant Commander Alara, the weapons officer. Her voice was soft but firm. "We have the capability to help." Kalin turned to face his crew. Their expressions ranged from concern to determination. They knew the risks, yet they also understood what was at stake. Lives that could be saved if they acted quickly. "Prepare for immediate departure." Kalin announced his decision made. "Alert the 5th and 7th battle groups to rendezvous at the edge of the Veil Nebula. We're responding to this distress call." Admiral Captain Janice said, her voice tense. "That's 3 battle groups, nearly 30 warships. The Council will see this as an act of aggression." "I'm not going in unprepared, Captain," Kalin replied firmly. "If there's a threat significant enough to cripple a Neveran vessel, I want enough firepower to ensure we all come home." He paused, meeting her gaze directly. "And if the Council has concerns, they can take them up with me after we've saved those people." The bridge erupted into activity as orders were relayed and coordinates were plotted. Within hours, the massive human fleet had assembled at the edge of the Veil Nebula, a formidable array of warships bristling with weapons and defenses that reflected humanity's evolution as warriors. As the fleet prepared to make the jump into restricted space, Kalen stood alone in his quarters, staring at the small holographic image of his family back on Earth. His decision could have far-reaching consequences, not just for his career, but for humanity's standing in the galactic community. Yet he couldn't ignore a cry for help, regardless of the politics involved. "Admiral," came Captain Janice's voice over the comm. "All ships report ready." Kalen took a deep breath. "Execute jump sequence. Let's bring them home." The massive human fleet vanished into hyperspace, leaving only the empty void and the silent judgment of distant stars. The emergence from hyperspace was meant to be smooth, a carefully calculated transition back into normal space. Instead, the human fleet materialized into chaos. The Indomitable shuddered violently as its sensors were overwhelmed by proximity warnings and radiation alerts. "Status report," Kalen demanded, gripping the command rail as the ship stabilized. "Multiple contacts, sir," Lieutenant Reese called out. "I'm reading over 50 unknown vessels engaged with what appears to be the Neveran ship." The main view screen activated, revealing a horrifying scene. The Neveran vessel. Starlight Seeker was barely recognizable, its elegant crystalline structure now shattered and burning. Surrounding it were dozens of angular metallic ships that moved with unnatural precision, firing concentrated energy beams that sliced through the remaining Neveran defenses like knives through silk. "Magnify those unknown vessels," Kalen ordered, his eyes narrowing. The image zoomed in on one of the attacking ships. Its surface was a disturbing amalgamation of metal and what appeared to be organic tissue pulsing with an eerie rhythm. No visible windows or external sensors could be seen, just weapon emplacements and propulsion systems. "Krell," whispered Veros, his face pale. "They're supposed to be just a myth, a cautionary tale told by the older spacefaring species." "Evidently not," Kalen replied grimly. "What do we know about them?" Varos quickly accessed the ship's database. "Not much, sir. Ancient legends describe them as a synthetic organic collective that sees all other life as resources to be harvested. They're said to adapt rapidly to any threat." "Sir," Captain Janice interrupted, "the enemy vessels have altered course. They're moving to engage us." Kalen straightened, his military training taking over. "Battle formations. All ships deploy defensive screens. Target the vessels nearest to the Neveran ship and fire when ready." The human fleet responded with practiced efficiency, arranging themselves into a three-dimensional battle formation that maximized their defensive coverage while allowing for overlapping fields of fire. Within moments, the vacuum of space was illuminated by the brilliant flashes of energy weapons and the fiery blooms of explosions. The Krell ships moved with a hive-mind coordination that was both beautiful and terrifying to witness. They adapted quickly to the human tactics, adjusting their formations to counter the humans' strategic advantages. But the Deathworlders had not earned their reputation without cause. "They're learning our patterns," Varos observed, analyzing the tactical display. "Each attack run is more effective than the last." "Then we change the pattern," Kalen replied. He opened a fleet-wide channel. "All ships implement randomization protocols Alpha 7. Weapons, free independent targeting." The human fleet's movements suddenly became unpredictable, each ship operating independently while still maintaining the overall strategic objective. This unexpected shift seemed to confuse the Krell vessels, creating gaps in their formation that the human ships exploited mercilessly. "Admiral?" Lieutenant Reese called out, "We're receiving a transmission from the Neveran vessel." "Put it through," Kalen ordered. The view screen flickered to show the interior of the Starlight Seeker. Smoke filled the command center, and several consoles were emitting showers of sparks. A tall, slender figure with iridescent skin and large compound eyes stood amidst the destruction. "This is Ambassador Nyreel of the Neveran Conclave," the alien said, its melodic voice strained. We did not expect a human response." The Council. The Council isn't here, Ambassador, Kaylin interrupted. We are. What's your status? Critical. Our engines are destroyed and life support is failing. We have many wounded and the Krell have already boarded lower decks. They're harvesting our people. The word harvesting sent a chill through the bridge crew. Kaylin's jaw tightened. We'll send boarding parties immediately. Hold your position and seal off as many sections as you can. As the battle raged around them, Kaylin dispatched Marine contingents to the Neverend vessel. The boarding action was risky. Dividing forces in the middle of a space battle was generally considered tactically unsound. But Kaylin wasn't willing to sacrifice the Neverend crew while fighting the Krell fleet. Sir? Captain Janus reported after an hour of intense fighting. The Marines have secured the Neverend vessel and evacuated the survivors, but the Krell are adapting to our weapons. Their later ships are showing increased resistance to our energy weapons. Kaylin studied the tactical display, noting how the Krell vessels were indeed becoming more resilient with each engagement. This adaptive capability made them increasingly dangerous opponents. Intelligence Officer Varos Kaylin called analysis. Varos looked up from his console. They appear to be networked, sir, sharing data and adapting collectively. However, this suggests a potential vulnerability. If they rely on a communication network, we could disrupt it. Kaylin finished the thought. Lieutenant Commander Alara, prepare a full-spectrum EM pulse, maximum yield. Target the center of their formation. Sir, that would temporarily disable our ships as well, Alara warned. Understood. All ships prepare for temporary systems shutdown. Emergency protocols only. The human fleet executed a rapid reorganization, creating a spherical formation with the damaged Neverend vessel protected at its center. As the Krell ships closed in, sensing victory, Kaylin gave the order. Execute. The electromagnetic pulse expanded outward like a silent tsunami, washing over both human and Krell vessels. As predicted, the human ships went dark, their systems temporarily offline. But the effect on the Krell was far more dramatic. The synthetic organic ships convulsed in space, their coordinated movements dissolving into chaos. Several collided with each other while others fired weapons randomly, hitting their own allies. Reroute all emergency power to weapons and shields, Kaylin ordered as minimal systems came back online. Target the disoriented vessels and fire at will. The human fleet, operating on backup systems and manual control skills, honed through countless drills and the innate human ability to function under adverse conditions, launched a devastating counterattack. The disorganized Krell fleet, suddenly stripped of its hive mind advantage, was methodically torn apart by the disciplined human forces. Within 20 minutes, the remaining Krell vessels retreated, jumping into hyperspace and leaving behind the wreckage of their destroyed comrades. The space around the Veil Nebula, once a battlefield of chaos and destruction, fell eerily quiet. Damage report, Kaylin requested, surveying the aftermath. We've lost 3 destroyers and a cruiser, sir, Captain Janus reported solemnly. 17 other ships reporting varying degrees of damage, casualty numbers still coming in. Kaylin nodded grimly. Every loss weighed heavily on him, each name another burden he would carry. And the Neverends. 47 survivors evacuated, Admiral. Their vessel is beyond salvage. Signal the fleet, begin recovery operations, and prepare for return to Terran space. As the human ships tended to their wounded and repaired their damage, a new alert sounded on the Indomitable's bridge. Sir, Lieutenant Reese called, her voice tense. Multiple contacts emerging from hyperspace. Signatures match. Galactic Council enforcement vessels. Kaylin sighed. The reckoning had arrived sooner than expected. Open a channel. The view screen activated to reveal a stern-faced Altarian, a species known for their rigid adherence to Council law. The Altarian's gray leathery face and multiple eye stalks conveyed disapproval even before it spoke. Admiral Kaylin of Earth. The Altarian began its translator, converting its clicks and whistles into standard language. You have violated Council directive 1173. By entering restricted space with a military force, explain your actions immediately. Kalen stood tall facing the alien representative without flinching. We responded to a distress call from a Neveran vessel under attack by a hostile force. We have rescued 47 Neveran citizens who would otherwise have perished. The Neverans entered restricted space knowingly. The Altarian countered. The consequences of their actions are their responsibility. Your intervention was unauthorized and represents a grave breach of trust. Ambassador Nyril appeared beside Kalen, still bearing the wounds of the attack. Enforcer Thalvek, with respect, the Neveron Conclave, will formally protest any sanction against the humans. They saved our people when no one else would respond to our call for help. The Altarian's eye stalks quivered with irritation. Ambassador, your ship's intrusion into this sector will also be addressed by the Council. But that does not excuse the human response. A single rescue vessel might have been justified. This, it gestured to the impressive human fleet, is a military incursion. A military incursion that prevented the Krell from establishing a foothold in this region. Kalen responded evenly. We faced over 50 hostile vessels with technology that adapts to opposition. Would you have preferred we sent a single inadequate rescue ship that would have been destroyed, leaving the Krell to continue their expansion unchecked? The mention of the Krell caused the Altarian enforcer to pause its eye stalks, pulling back in what humans had come to recognize as surprise or concern. The Krell are a myth, Thalvek stated, though with less certainty than before. I have 47 Neveran witnesses and significant battle debris that suggests otherwise. Kalen replied. We're transmitting our sensor logs and battle recordings to your vessels now. Review them and then tell me if you still believe we overreacted. The communication temporarily muted as the Altarian consulted with others off-screen. When Thalvek returned, its demeanor had shifted subtly. The Council will need to verify this information, it said. Your fleet is ordered to remain here until such verification is complete. My wounded need proper medical facilities, Kalen countered. And the Neveran survivors require specialized care that we cannot provide indefinitely. We will proceed to the nearest Terran outpost with your observers on board if necessary, but we will not remain here. The negotiation continued for hours, with the Altarian enforcer eventually conceding to Kalen's demand to move his fleet, albeit under escort, from Council vessels. The diplomatic fallout would be managed in the coming weeks, but for now, the immediate crisis had been resolved. As the human fleet prepared for the journey home, Kalen stood in the medical bay of the Indomitable, visiting the wounded from both his crew and the Neveron vessel. Ambassador Nyril approached him as he finished speaking with a young ensign who had lost an arm during the boarding action. Admiral the Neveran said, its voice carrying the musical quality characteristic of its species. I must formally express the gratitude of the Neveran Conclave. Your actions today, while politically complicated, saved many lives. Kalen nodded. We couldn't ignore your distress call, Ambassador, no matter what the Council's regulations state. You must know that this incident will change things, Nyril continued. The Council has long feared the military potential of humanity. Your display of force today, however justified, will only reinforce that fear. Perhaps, Kalen acknowledged, but it may also force the Council to recognize a truth they've been avoiding, that the galaxy is not as safe or controlled as they would like to believe. The Krell were supposed to be a myth, yet they nearly destroyed your ship and everyone aboard. Nyril's compound eyes shimmered with an emotion that Kalen couldn't quite interpret. Some on the Council have suspected the return of the Krell for some time. There have been incidents, disappearances of isolated outposts, strange sensor readings in the outer reaches. But acknowledging such threats would require a significant military response, which many Council members are reluctant to sanction. Because they fear creating weapons that might later be used against them, Kalen surmised. Precisely. The Galactic Council was formed after the last great interstellar war 10,000 years ago. The founders were determined to prevent such devastation from occurring again. Military power has been systematically discouraged, with only minimal forces maintained for policing actions. Kalen smiled grimly. And then along came humans from a world that shaped us into natural warriors with our history of conflict and our instinct to fight rather than flee from danger. You understand the Council's concern. I do, but I also understand that sometimes peaceful intentions aren't enough. Sometimes you need people who are willing and able to fight. The conversation was interrupted by Captain Janice, who entered the medical bay with a data pad. Admiral, preliminary reports from the analysis of the Krell debris. You'll want to see this immediately. Kalen reviewed the information, his expression growing more somber with each passing moment. The Krell technology was far more advanced than they had initially assessed, and the biological components suggested capabilities that would make future encounters even more dangerous. We need to present this to the Council as soon as possible, Kalen said. This isn't just about justifying our actions today. This is about preparing for a threat that could endanger every sentient species in the galaxy. The journey back to Tehran space was tense, with Council observers documenting every aspect of the human fleet's operations and interviewing the Neveran survivors. By the time they reached the nearest human outpost, a massive space station orbiting the colony world of New Horizon, the diplomatic channels were buzzing with activity. Kalen was immediately summoned to a virtual council session where representatives from 27 spacefaring civilizations would evaluate his actions and determine the response of the galactic community. The Admiral prepared himself for what would undoubtedly be a difficult confrontation. The council chamber, even in its virtual form, was an impressive sight. Holographic representations of the various council members surrounded Kalen in a semicircle, their diverse physiologies, a testament to the variety of evolutionary paths that had led to sentience across the galaxy. High Counselor Jen, a Meridian, with flowing tentacle-like appendages and a reputation for fairness, opened the proceedings. Admiral Kalen, you stand before this council accused of violating restricted space with a military force, contrary to the Treaty of Proxima and Council Directive 1173. How do you respond? Kalen stood at attention, his uniform immaculate, his posture unbending. High Counselor, honored members of the Council, I acknowledge that my fleet entered restricted space. I did so in response to a distress call from a Neveron vessel under attack by what we have confirmed to be Krell forces. The evidence has been submitted to this Council, including sensor logs, battle recordings, and debris analysis. Your response was disproportionate, argued Counselor Drav, an Alterian, known for his hawkish stance toward human expansion. You deployed 3 battle groups, a significant portion of humanity's military strength. With respect, Counselor, the outcome validates my decision, Kalen replied calmly. Had we sent a smaller force, we would have been overwhelmed by the Krell, resulting in the loss of both the Neveran crew and our rescue forces. Furthermore, the Krell would have gained a foothold in a sector dangerously close to multiple inhabited systems. Counselor Elira, a Neveron representative, spoke up. The Never-End Conclave has reviewed the evidence and formally expresses its gratitude to Admiral Kalen and the human forces. Their intervention saved 47 of our citizens, including several of our most accomplished scientists, and Ambassador Nyriel, who was on a sanctioned research mission. A research mission in restricted space? Questioned Counselor Trell of Ordani, whose crystalline body structure refracted the light around him. The Neveran Conclave was granted special dispensation to study the unusual stellar phenomena in that region, Elira explained. A dispensation that was approved by this very council 6 standard months ago. This revelation caused a stir among the council members. Several began consulting data terminals not visible in the holographic projection. Regardless of the Neveran presence, Counselor Drav continued, the human response remains concerning. The Treaty of Proxima specifically limits human military operations to protect the stability of the galactic community. Kalen's patience began to wear thin. Counselors, with all due respect, I believe we're overlooking the most significant aspect of this incident. The Krell, a species that many of you have dismissed as mythological, are very real and pose an immediate threat to this entire region of space. He gestured, and holographic images of the Krell ships and the recovered technology appeared in the center of the virtual chamber. Our analysis indicates that the Krell possess adaptive technology far beyond our current understanding. They appear to operate as a collective, sharing information and rapidly evolving their tactics and defenses in response to opposition. Had we not intervened, they would have completely consumed the Neveron vessel and crew, adding their knowledge and technology to their own. Dr. Sarnath, a human xenobiologist who had been granted special permission to attend the session, stepped forward. Our preliminary analysis of the biological components of the Krell debris suggests a disturbing truth. They don't simply destroy other species, they absorb them. The tissue samples contain genetic material from at least 7 different known species, including several that have been reported missing or extinct in the past century. The council chamber fell silent as the implications of this information sank in. High Counselor Jen's appendages writhed in what humans had learned to interpret as deep concern. "If what you say is true," Jen said slowly, "then the galaxy faces a threat of unprecedented nature. A threat that the Council's policies have left us ill-equipped to confront." Kalen added, pressing his advantage. "By discouraging military development and restricting the movements of more martially inclined species like humans, you've created a vulnerability that the Krell are now exploiting." Counselor Drav bristled visibly. "Are you suggesting, Admiral, that humanity should be given free rein to militarize space? That the very restrictions that have maintained peace for 10 millennia should be abandoned because of a single incident?" "I'm suggesting, Counselor, that the galaxy has changed, and our approach must change with it," Kalen responded firmly. "The peace you've maintained was possible because there was no external threat significant enough to challenge it. That is no longer the case." The debate continued for hours, with various council members expressing concerns, asking questions, and proposing responses to the Krell threat. Throughout it all, Kalen stood his ground, presenting the human perspective with a blend of diplomatic tact and military directness that gradually gained the respect of even his most vocal critics. Finally, High Counselor Jen called for a recess to allow the council to deliberate in private. Kalen returned to the Indomitable, exhausted, but satisfied that he had at least ensured the Krell threat would be taken seriously. Captain Janice met him at the docking bay, her expression grim. "Admiral, we've received reports from our long-range scout vessels. Krell signatures have been detected in 3 additional sectors, all at the fringes of Council space." Kalen's fatigue vanished, replaced by a renewed sense of urgency. "Compile all the data and prepare it for transmission to the Council. They need to understand that this isn't an isolated incident." Before they could proceed, a priority communication arrived from the Council chamber. High Counselor Jen requested Kalen's immediate return for the announcement of their decision. When Kalen re-entered the virtual Council chamber, he sensed a shift in the atmosphere. The holographic representatives seemed more unified, the earlier divisions less pronounced. "Admiral Kalen," High Counselor Jen began, "this council has reviewed the evidence presented regarding both your violation of restricted space and the Krell threat. It is the judgment of this council that your actions, while contrary to established protocols, were justified given the extraordinary circumstances." A murmur of agreement passed through the assembled representatives. Jen continued, "Furthermore, in light of the confirmed Krell presence and the reports of additional sightings, this council hereby establishes a galactic defense initiative. Given humanity's demonstrated capabilities in combat situations and your personal experience with the Krell, we are requesting that Earth provide leadership for this initiative." Kalen blinked in surprise. This was far more than he had hoped for, not just exoneration, but a formal recognition of humanity's military value to the galactic community. I am honored by the Council's trust," Kalen replied carefully. "However, I must emphasize that an effective defense against the Krell will require the resources and cooperation of all Council species. Each civilization brings unique perspectives and capabilities that will be essential in this conflict. High Counselor Jen's appendages formed a pattern that humans had learned to associate with approval. Well said, Admiral. The initiative will indeed be a collaborative effort, drawing on the strengths of all member species, but humanity's natural aptitude for warfare, combined with your ethical restraint, as demonstrated by your rescue mission, makes your species uniquely qualified to coordinate our military response. The formal announcement was followed by a flurry of planning sessions, resource allocations, and strategic discussions that lasted well into the night. By the time Kalen returned to the Indomitable, the shape of the new Galactic Defense Initiative was beginning to take form. Captain Janus and Intelligence Officer Veros were waiting for him in his quarters, both looking as exhausted as he felt. "Congratulations, Admiral," Janus said with a tired smile. "It seems your act of defiance has changed the course of galactic politics." Kalen sank into a chair, the weight of recent events and future responsibilities pressing down on him. "I'm not sure congratulations are in order, Captain. We've just been handed the monumental task of defending the galaxy against an enemy we barely understand. But we're not alone," Veros pointed out. "For the first time since humanity joined the galactic community, we're being seen as partners rather than potential threats." "Partners born of necessity," Kalen replied, though without bitterness. "The Council fears the Krell more than they fear us, at least for now." "Perhaps that's enough," Janus suggested. "A common enemy has united disparate peoples throughout human history. Maybe the Krell will serve the same function for the galactic community." Kalen nodded slowly, considering her words. "Perhaps. But unity forged in fear is fragile. If we're to build something lasting, we'll need to establish trust and mutual respect that goes beyond our immediate crisis." The three officers fell into a contemplative silence, each lost in their own thoughts about the challenges ahead. The Krell threat was real and growing, but so was the opportunity to reshape humanity's role in the galactic community, to prove that the very traits that made humans formidable warriors could also make them valuable allies and protectors. As Kalen finally prepared for a few hours of much-needed rest, he found himself thinking of the never-in-distress call that had started it all. One desperate plea for help. One decision to respond despite the rules and the course of galactic history had changed. The Admiral smiled faintly as sleep began to claim him. Sometimes he reflected doing the right thing, despite the consequences, was the only choice a person could live with, and sometimes, just sometimes, it led to outcomes no one could have predicted. In the darkness of his quarters, with the distant hum of the Indomitable's engines providing a comforting backdrop, Admiral Kalen drifted into sleep, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new battles, and perhaps new allies in a galaxy that had suddenly become both more dangerous and more united than ever before. The Krell would come, of that he had no doubt, but when they did, they would find not isolated vulnerable targets, but a galactic community standing together. Deathworlders and peaceful species alike, ready to defend their shared right to exist in a universe vast enough for all forms of life, but not for those who would consume others to satisfy their endless hunger for expansion. One mistake, aliens sending an SOS to a forbidden zone. One response, Deathworlders sending a fleet in defiance of the rules. And from those two actions, a new future for the galaxy had begun to unfold.